Hi everyone, my name is Karen, this is my channel RatherBeReading, and today I'm bringing to you my Around the Year in 52 Books wrap up. If you saw my 2017 goal review and statistics, then you know that one of my goals in the 2017 reading year was to complete the Around the Year in 52 Books challenge. The Around the Year in 52 Books challenge is a Goodreads group that has a challenge. The idea of it is that there's one challenge for every week of the year. As in previous years, I haven't done it like one challenge in the designated week. I've just taken all 52 challenges and tried to check them off throughout the year. And so I was pretty successful with that, and in this video I'm just going to be going through all 52 challenges and which book I used to complete which challenges. I have not doubled up on any of the challenges. I have an individual book for each challenge. I'll leave a link to the Goodreads group down below as well. It is going on again in 2018, so I'll leave that link down below in case you guys would like to participate in future. But let's jump straight in and go through all of the challenges and which book I decided to use. Quick note, I do have my laptop down here on my lap just because there's 52 challenges I have to go through, so apologies if I am looking down at any point. So the very first challenge was to read a book from the 2016 Goodreads Choice Awards. For that one, I used Shelter by Jung Yoon. This was nominated in the fiction category in 2016. Challenge number 2 was to read a book with at least 2 different perspectives. For that, I used The Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins. Challenge number 3 was to read a book that you meant to read in 2016. For that, I used City of Ashes by Cassandra Clare. Challenge number 4 was to read a book in which the title of the book did not contain the letter E, and for that I used City of Glass by Cassandra Clare. Challenge number 5 was to read a historical fiction novel, and for that I used Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. Challenge number 6 was to read a book that was being released as a movie in 2017. For that, I used My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier. Challenge number 7 was to read a book with an animal in the title or on the cover. For that, I used The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater, which had Raven both in the title and on the cover. Challenge number 8 was to read a book by a person of colour. For that, I used Shatter Me by Tahereh Mafi. Tahereh Mafi is of Iranian descent and is a woman of colour. Challenge number 9 was to read a book that was in the middle of your to read. So for this, I went to my Goodreads to read list, and I had 24 pages on that. So I went to page 12 of those 24 pages and picked a book off that, and there was one book on that page that I happened to own. So for that, I used The Love That Split the World by Emily Henry. Challenge number 10 was to read a dual timeline novel. For that, I did use Daughter by Jane Shamilt. Challenge number 11 was to read pick a challenge from one of the many other reading challenges that go on throughout the year, and to pick one from that and complete it. So I chose one of the challenges from the Pop Sugar reading challenge in 2017, which was to read a book with a red spine, and for that I used Forbidden by Tabitha Suzuma. Challenge number 12 was to read a book that is based on a myth. For that, I used A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas, which I believe is based on the Hades and Persephone story. Challenge number 13 was to read a book that is recommended by one of your favorite authors. For that, I used Room by Emma Donoghue. This is a book that there was once an article published that was 11 book recommendations by Jodi Picoult, and I really love Jodi Picoult, and Room was mentioned on that list, so I used that one. Challenge number 14 was to read a book with a strong female character. For that, I used The Winner's Curse by Marie Rakowski. Challenge number 15 was to read a book set in Scandinavia, and for that I used The Farm by Tom Rob Smith, which is set in Sweden. Challenge number 16 was just to read a mystery. For that, I used Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. Challenge number 17 was to read a book with illustrations. For that one, I used Sweet Tooth Volume 1 by Jeff Lemire. Challenge number 18 was to read a really long book, which was defined as being a book with over 600 pages. For that, I used City of Heavenly Fire by Cassandra Clare, which had 664 pages. Challenge number 19 was to read a New York Times bestseller. For that, I used the Orange Complete Collection Volume 2 by Ishigo Takano. And challenge number 20 was to read a book that you've owned for a while but hadn't gotten to. For that, I used Obsidian by Jennifer L. Armentrout, which is a book that I received for my birthday in 2015 and hadn't gotten to at that point in 2017. Challenge 21 was to read a book that is a continuation of a book you've already read. So for that, I used The Golden Lily by Rochelle Mead, which was the next book that I had to read in the Bloodline series. Challenge 22 was to read a book by an author that you'd never read before. For that, I used Amy and Roger's Epic Detour by Morgan Matson. Challenge 23 was to read a book from the BBC The Big Read List. For that, I used Tess of the D'Urbervilles by Thomas Hardy. Challenge 24 was to read a book that was written by at least 2 authors. For this, I used These Broken Stars by Amy Kaufman and Megan Spooner. Challenge 25 was to read a book about a famous historical figure. Now, this one is a little bit of a stretch. So for this, I'm using The School for Unusual Girls by Kathleen Baldwin, because a big focus on this has to do with like the historical period around Napoleon, and it's all got to do with Napoleon. It's after Napoleon was defeated and he's been exiled to the island, and it's about him, I think, escaping from the island, and the girls are in a school of spies, that type of thing. So it does deal quite heavily with Napoleon. I had originally meant to read Wolf by Ryan Groudon for this challenge, as that has a lot to do with Hitler, but I've decided to use, I didn't get to that book, so I've decided to use The School for Unusual Girls by Kathleen Baldwin, even though it's maybe a little bit of a stretch. Challenge 26 is to read an adventure book. For that, I used Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens. Challenge 17 is to read a book by one of your favorite authors. For this, I used Small Great Things by Jodi Picoult, as previously mentioned. Jodi Picoult is one of my favorite authors. Challenge 28 was to read a non-fiction book. For that, I used Scrappy Little Nobody by Anna Kendrick, which was her memoir that she released. Challenge 29 was to read a book that was published outside the 4 major publishing houses. For that, I used Melt by Celine Castrovilla, which was a self-published novel. And Challenge 30 was to read a book from the Goodreads Top 100 YA books. And for that, I used Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. Challenge 31 is to read a book that's in a subgenre of your favorite genre. My favorite genre is thrillers, and so for that I'm using The Twilight Wife by A.J. Banner, which is a psychological thriller, which is a subset of thriller. Challenge 32 was to read a book with a long title, which was described as being any book with more than 5 words in the title. So for that, I'm using A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. Challenge 33 was to read a magical realism novel. For that, I used The Dream Thieves by Maggie Stiefvater. Challenge 34 was to read a book set in or by an author from the Southern Hemisphere. For that, I used This Shattered World by Amy Kaufman and Megan Spooner, as Amy Kaufman is an Australian author. Challenge 35 was to read a book where one of the main characters is royalty. For that, I used King's Cage by Victoria Aveyard, which does have a lot of different characters in it that have all got to do, the whole book's basically to do with a royal type of thing, so I figured that one works for this. Challenge 36 was to read a Hugo Award winner or nominee. For that, I used Uprooted by Naomi Novik, which was nominated in 2016 for the Hugo Award. Challenge 37 was just to use a book that you choose randomly. For that, I just at random decided to use Fire and Flood by Victoria Scott. Challenge 38 was to read a novel that is inspired by a work of classic literature. For that, I used Sisters Red by Jackson Pierce, which is a retelling of Little Red Riding Hood. Challenge 39 is to read an epistolary fiction novel, and for that, I used Bridget Jones' Diary by Helen Fielding, which is obviously told in diary format. And Challenge 40 was to read a book published in 2017, and for that, I'm using Our Own Private Universe by Robin Talley. Challenge 41 was to read a book with an unreliable narrator. For that, I chose Telltale by Sam Hayes. Challenge 42 was to read a book that was on the list of the best books of the 21st century so far. For that, I chose Water for Elephants by Sarah Gruen. Challenge 43 was to read a book with a chilling atmosphere, be it scary, unsettling, or cold. For that, I chose Coraline by Neil Gaiman, which I think has a very eerie and unsettling setting. Challenge 44 is to read a recommendation from the What Should I Read Next website. Now, this is the only challenge that I've technically not completed, but you do get one wild card. So I'm using the wild card for this. The What Should I Read Next is a website where you can type in a book and then it will give you recommendations based on that book. I really don't like that website. I went to it quite a few times over the course of the year to try check off this challenge, and I type in the book and either the book wouldn't be on there, the book that I'd read wouldn't come up, or the recommendations just didn't seem that connected and I wasn't interested in any of them. So in the end, I just decided to use a wild card for that challenge. And then challenge 45 was to read a book with a one-word title, of which I chose Slammed by Colleen Hoover. Challenge 46 was to read a time travel book. For that, I chose Orange, the Complete Collection, Volume 1 by Ishigo Takano, which is a manga volume that there was only the 2 volumes, both of which I read that year, and it's a time travel, that's what it deals with mainly, so one of the main concepts. Challenge 47 was to read a past suggestion that didn't win, so this is like a suggested category for the challenge that didn't get picked. So for that, I chose to read a book that had a season in the title, and for that I chose Second Chance Summer by Morgan Matson. Challenge 48 was to read a banned book. For that I chose City of Bones by Cassandra Clare. I couldn't find a lot of reasoning for why it had been banned, but I presume because it does deal with like angels and demons and that type of thing, which I presume some religious areas may not have been okay with that. Challenge 49 was to read a book off someone else's bookshelf. For that, I chose If She Did It by Jessica Treadway, which I think it might have been the very first book that I read in 2017, and that was a book that I was, like, it was my mom's book. Challenge 50 is to read a Penguin modern classic. For that, I read Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Challenge 51 was to read a collection, be it essay, short stories, poetry, etc. For that, I read Summer Days and Summer Nights, which is a short story collection edited by Stephanie Perkins. And challenge 52, the last challenge, was to read a book set in a fictional location, and for that, I chose Days of Blood and Starlight by Laini Taylor. So those were the 52 challenges of the Around the Year in 52 books that I completed and the books I used to check them all off. I would love to know if you guys participated in this challenge, what books you used for the challenges in some of the categories were really hard, like which categories did you find really hard to check off? I would love to know. I don't know if anyone finds this interesting, what books I used for which challenges, but I personally find this type of thing really interesting because I'm a bit of a nerd like that. So I'd love to chat in the comments down below. Please like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe if you want to see more from my channel. But that's all I've got for this video today. Bye guys!